and I think the opportunity to work inside prison, and having done that the last 7 years, has really shown that regardless of which environment you're in, and it could be as challenging, I mean, and I think here you get one of the most challenging environments, that it is possible, you know, that there is no excuse, and you're never so separated from yourself that you can't find yourself again.
This is Let's Talk Communication, and I'm Karina Simpson. To have conversations that count, we need to cultivate a way of being, and that way includes being respectful and responsible and walking our talk. Karina Anderson is a woman who lives these values in her own life and in her work, where she started with the rehabilitation of prisoners and has extended now to grassroots level in communities and also within corporates with inspirational impact. Join me for a conversation that counts with Karina Anderson. Karina, please tell the story of how you got to be working today with some of the most hardened prisoners and criminals in our country.
That's quite a big story. You know, I think that I'll start when I came to South Africa a little bit more than 8 years ago. And, you know, I didn't really know at that stage what was awaiting me. But I did know that I carried a seed, and for me it was important to start to understand what that meant. So in 2007, I started to write my book, The Responsible Individual, and I also started to shape the first building blocks of what today is our coach education, part of what we call a Circle of Change engine. And a very important module within that education is to serve the community, but I didn't know at that stage what that meant. I had the first coaches in training, and I was looking for a place to serve and to offer this coach education. And then I met a social worker in October 2007 up from Bromley Maximum Prison. We actually met at a business breakfast in Constantia here in Cape Town. And he invited me to come and see these prisoners that he was working with. It was a group, they were called Group of Hope. And coincidentally, I had a training the next week, very close to the prison. And so I went and visited them the 1st of November 2007. And I met 16 inmates that were already on a path of change. You know, they had a wonderful project, they were doing wonderful things. But what I identified within the day I spent with them, that they had some important puzzle pieces that were missing, like a deeper inner development, a deeper inner understanding of who they are, so that when you charge a direction, that you understand what that means on a much deeper level and on a conscious level. So I said to them, you know, I'm busy writing my book, and I'm willing to give you a year of my time. I will come once a week. Exactly how it looks, we have to see, because it's a pilot project, and they were all quite keen, also a bit scared because they didn't know what it meant. But I mean, I think we all agreed back then that let's give it a go. So I had to start quality assure the project, and that took, I mean, it was record time. Within 2 weeks, the prison was so excited, and within 2 weeks we got green light. So we officially started the program in January 2008. So that is how the door opened.
Okay, and so a lot of the work then you do inside the prisons, as you say, is very deep personal work in getting them to reconnect with themselves. And
yeah, it's a journey of discovery. I mean, the book I've written is not just for prisons, it's for individuals, you know, who want to travel home into their hearts. And I think the opportunity to work inside prison, and having done that the last 7 years, has really shown that regardless of which environment you're in, and it could be as challenging, I mean, and I think here you get one of the most challenging environments, that it is possible, you know, that there is no excuse, and you're never so separated from yourself that you can't find yourself again. And yeah, so it is a very deep journey. It takes a choice to step into that space, wanting to discover yourself, that's also why part of, very important part of what I do is I educate coaches also inside prison, and these become change agents. And if I look at over the last years, having had these incredible beacons of light living inside prison that are starting to awaken and become more conscious, the value it is. Because I can't reach into all corners of the prison, but they can. And here you have these beacons of light, and other people are starting off, the inmates, and they are seeing it. They're not quite sure what it means or what it is, but it awakens a curiosity. And many of them come and say, what is it that you have? Tell me. And that's how many of the guys enroll. So we have, in several prisons, I have coaches living that are still incarcerated, and who are part of the awakening process of many of those that feel a bit lost and a little bit separated, that are interested in getting to know more of themselves.
So just to give some more of the context of your work, so that's how it started, in the prisons and that. But I know it's worked, you've also started now working outside the prison, so helping reintegration of the prisoners back into the communities, and also looking at youth development, so that it's looking at trying to help people not end up in a prison. Is that right?
Yes. No, I think it's very important to understand the full circle. I think it's important to shape role models. We live in a society, especially in this country, where there are a lot of role models. You can have bad role models too.
Yes.
You can have the gangster role model, you can have the one that does the drugs, and there are a lot of young people that grow up in challenged communities that aspire to that. It's not like a big thing to go to prison. It's kind of what many people do, or somebody has somebody in the family that's been inside prison. So it's important to show that there are more options, and to offer education. And I think that's what we do. We offer an inner education that has been lacking. And this education is presented via role models that we educate inside prison, and upon reintegrating, we help them, because now they come back into society with a coaching and a facilitator toolbox. We assist them in building a program where they live, and have enough tools to go and inspire and to be that light no matter where they go. And it's not so much in our doing, but it's more in our being. So if this is who you are, people will start to notice. And we have, for example, Franklin, who is one of our change agents, who reintegrated almost 3 years ago. And he's been an incredible inspiration. So he does partly parolee support, and he's gone into schools where he does motivational talks. He's also partly, in the last few years, he facilitated one of our youth development projects in Nyanga East, who is one of, in the Western Cape, the highest risk community. And there he was visiting a creche on a weekly basis to train the teachers and those facilitating education for children, so that they started to expand their awareness, expand their toolboxes. Like the principal at that creche, she started to go into Montessori teachers training. She started to see that there are more opportunities, and I'm not a victim. I am in charge of my journey, and how can I, when I wake up, start to create environment, because she's passionate about children, and she's doing the great R. And to have that Montessori environment where you really awaken the child in a very gentle way to kind of help them go into the school system. And I think that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
So our aim is to shape role models and change agents that go back into the communities and that plant these seeds, both in their own families, because somebody like Franklin is also, he just got engaged. He has a daughter, he still wants to grow his family, and he's a wonderful father. And if you'd listen to him, he wasn't a great father 10 or 5 years ago, because he was unaware and he was unconscious. So it's very important, that contribution into society, when we build, youth and inspire them and see that there's so many more possibilities than drugs, than crime, and going that route.
Yeah, wow. So then to change track then, with that as your background though, but what do you think what is the conversation that you believe we need to be having about criminals and prisoners?
Well, I think it's important to understand, what it comes down to is our behavior, and it comes down to really beginning to understand ourselves and then avail those platforms. It is about education, availing more opportunities, and also to give people a chance. And I know it's difficult, because we have so much crime that sometimes we can be blinded and we lack to see the importance of investing in that. However, our prison population will reintegrate. Most of them will reintegrate, and most of them go back again because they lack the inner development, they lack education. So it's very important to begin to understand also that we as society also has a responsibility. That's always my first point, is that I own a share in the well-being of society. I am part of that awakening. And those people that sit inside prison, or those people out of the communities that do crime, are also part of me. It is part of a bigger consciousness. So how can I contribute? How can each one of us? And that's what we want to do with the resource center we want to build this year. So that is going to be another angle on our approach, where it's really understanding what kind of resource I am as an individual. So for the person that reintegrates, understanding that we're going to build partnerships and invite companies, anybody who feels they have a skill they can contribute with to begin to see the possibilities. And when awakening takes place, that what happens to these people that were once locked or felt lost. And we all live in a prison. I've seen as much, limitation outside than I see inside prison. It's just that inside prison you're more aware that you are incarcerated, where outside prison you're less aware that you are incarcerated.
True, yeah.
So you sit in the shackles of your old beliefs. So it's all of us that I think that if we all start to take that ownership, we can awaken together, and it can be an incredible inspiration to walk with somebody who has, yes, done crime, but is waking up to what that means and waking up to how to contribute differently. I have grown tremendously the last 7 years. I'd no idea, what kind of contribution that all of these people would give to me. And I think that is important. That's the conversations that I've had lots of in the guidance processes, and where I say, wow, I can be a better me because I begin to understand what that means, and also how I can contribute being a mother, being a daughter to my family, being a partner, being a contributor to society. It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. So what are some of the skills in there that you believe you've had to develop or have developed to help you handling working in these highly challenged environments? Because I would think a big part of working in the prison there must be this is my mind read, you can tell me, but a great sense of distrust in that kind of space.
Well, I think it also depends on my mindset, and it depends on my beliefs and what I've been conditioned to. So I feel that, when I go into the processes, I don't distrust, I have an incredible trust in the process. I also don't judge. And I think that's been one of my big learning arenas, because I do have a side of me that can be judgmental, because I'm quite a big perfectionist. I can have control in me, and those are my development areas that I need to be conscious about. And part of my development within prison is that to not sit with judgment, but to avail a platform for discovery, because you don't give people a chance to develop if you judge them. So the platforms that we create is very non-judgmental. They're open, they're allowing. It's not about what's good or what's bad, because that's how we, have boxed ourselves. All our patterns are created because we make up our mind what's good and bad, and then we choose that way. And I'm there to assist to develop more lanes But part of our, the way the facilitator training is put together that I created is that, it is building blocks, and you don't have an answer, and it keeps growing with you all the time. So it's about being open and available for angles. And that, through the process, I can only guide what I do myself. So my biggest development has been to do what I say every single day. That I share my story as much as they share their story. And it is those, and that's why it's so relevant, your program as well, these conversations. It is that I avail myself too, and I'm honest, I'm open, and guiding in those processes. Listening, observing has been very, very important.
So a big part of that then is working on your ability to put your judgments aside. It sounds like, and just be in that space with the person sitting in front of you.
Completely.
And not coming with the preconceptions of or labels like this is a criminal, someone who stole stuff or whatever they...
No, because my starting point is that we're all incarcerated. I'm incarcerated too, in my mind. And when I take ownership of that, and that is why it's called the responsible individual, I take ownership. I'm responsible about what I come with, my limiting beliefs. And so, and that is what I guide and teach, to take that kind of ownership and to be able to identify, when am I projecting that? Why is it green for me? And why do I want you to be green too? Why can't we have fruit salad or rainbow? So it's again to understand, what am I motivated by when I do certain things? And the more we work on that within the individual, the more we wake up to how beautiful diversity is, how much each one of us are part of each other. So if you activate an emotion within me, I learn to understand that that is actually not about you, but you are helping me to see deeper into me, because I begin to question, why am I angry? Why am I sad? And in those gateways open to develop more of ourselves, but we can only teach that if we do it ourselves. So again, my own development is all the time to do what I say, to practice all of these tools in my personal toolbox.
So it's very much, applying to self. So you talk a lot about personal toolbox, and I think that's why part of why your work is so successful is you're helping people who feel like they have no resources to actually start identifying the resources that they do have. Because just taking responsibility for yourself and your own emotions is a resource.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what are some of the other things, especially around because I think one of the things you talk about a lot is communication skills. So besides your own development of your communication skills, so being able to not be judgmental and share your story, what are some of the other skills that you are helping develop then with the people that you deal with then?
Well, what we follow is our framework. So we follow, we have the book,
yes.
Responsible Individual, and they're guided through this journey. So different skills is something like, to be able to view oneself. So yes, how you communicate with yourself, it's the listening ability, it's the observing ability, it's the ability to stop and reflect, not react. It's the ability to use no-goes. So meaning, I know that if I'm reacting and I feel judgment, part of me would take up this whip and I would hand it to you. The ability to stop that and reflect and take it inwardly. Healing ability, that I'm ability to go into myself, to silence. So it's a very soft and gentle approach that refers in the first part of the program. After that becomes much more strategic, and it becomes that they build a personal balance profile. And in this profile, they'll be able to see what kind of strategies to put into place when it comes to your personal development and to your development within relationships, to your development within learning. So what kind of elements are important for me. Like, for example, education to open up more. We have many people in our program that the moment they wake up inwardly, they begin to see the opportunity and say, wow, maybe I should do my matric. I mean, we have a lot of that inside prison. And then there's like, oh, maybe I should start doing that program or that program. There's a waking up to that there's so much more that they had no idea of because they were moving in one lane. So there's these very basic, simple tools in the responsible individual that takes care of their awakening. And it's so subtle that you hardly see it. It's in circles of sharing, so it's the ability to share a little bit more with each other, to open up, so the opening. And that I feel more and more comfortable, trusting. It's also the ability to connect. So to understand that what you share in your story is important, and how your story activates something within me, for me to understand my own story as well. So there's a lot of story sharing, a lot of conversations, there's a lot of connectedness, trusting more and more, deeper and deeper, healing and active development. So that's the first kind of part. Then they have an opportunity to sign up for facilitator training, and then they can go into a 3+ year coach educational training, where they learn to facilitate processes, where they learn to manage projects, where they learn more about communication. We have somebody who's been with us for several years, like Franklin. We will go in and invest in certain courses he would need to add to his toolbox, like writing skills. We have somebody we're sponsoring a bursary for an accounting course. So in the awakening, you find out as a resource, what more do I need, and what is it that I'm here for? So it's really an understanding, who am I, what's my self-identity, and the resource I am, what does that mean, and how can I keep developing that? What more do I need to add? So our platform is one that doesn't have everything, but it encourages you to go and add what you need. Exactly. So it's that spark, that catalyst to make you curious and to make you go see what you need and what can complement your journey.
Wow. And so, because, it's such a hardened place, a prison, or, we are perceiving the people that, had never been there, so I think we go back to what you said earlier, that it sounds like because my question was like, how do you get through to someone who is so hardened, so stuck in their way of seeing only one lane? But it sounds like what you said is the people that have started awakening, because part of it is you have to live your talk. You have to walk your talk. Because they are actually being different. It's almost like they're leading by example. So their actual beingness, because their energy must change. The way they smile, interact, their vibe that they give off will be different.
Completely.
That people then start to notice, hold on, that's very different to...
Yes. No, well, that's where it all starts, That's where it all starts. That you begin to be that light beacon, and that you are sharing that light with your environment. But for me, there's absolutely no difference if you are inside prison or outside prison. They are not more limited or more driving on one lane. I mean, I work a lot, the last few years, because of all the work I've been doing inside prison, a lot more people waking up to the toolbox I have. And so I've been adding my puzzle piece to some corporate environments as well. And there's not much difference in, that we are all human beings. We're all very limited. And we are all on this journey of awakening and shaping more of our toolbox and understanding what that means, both in a personal context, but also in context if you are an employee or if you build a business. And that's also what we help the inmate with when they move into the resource toolbox, which is the third pillar in our coach educational approach, is to understand what that means, and how to enrich the environments you work in. So it's a perfect example when you live inside this very tough environment. How can you begin to learn to enrich this environment? Do you understand the cell you are in the bigger body? you know your impact on others, and to take ownership of that, you know, the ripple effect that you have, that your energy has. So you can be a light and you can share the light, but we all have the capacity for darkness and light. We all have it. And that's why it's very important to be conscious about that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And very much then that the change starts with us. That's what I'm hearing. It's like, because I think a lot of people are always pointing fingers and trying to say, like, everyone else must, society needs to change. Do you know what I mean? The only way we're going to get this right is if society changes. But the way to change society is change ourselves. Every single person needs to change. And as you say, then look at what is your contribution, because each one of us contributes to that collective called society.
All the time, you know, and it's that exchange. So if we can begin to understand the concept of exchange, you know, and there's an abundant exchange that happens all the time. So in every interaction, and not just interactions with words, but interactions happens all the time. Are you aware of what you contribute with? And I think the waking up and the responsibility that lies in that is very important. And that is what we, through this education approach, with very gentle concepts, begin to awaken. And for me, it's like, it's been a research, it's been a study for me. Yeah. I'm curious about behavior. I'm curious about why we do certain things, and not to come up with answers. For me, it's important just to avail stories, to avail showcases, because I would like us all to wake more up to the many possibilities that there are. You know, we're so quick in judging, we're so quick in thinking that we know, and we'd like to avail that, you know. So also with our resource center, the next few years, hopefully, we'll be ready to write the next book, which will be about the COC, the Circle of Change approach, both to see how people in all different kinds of environments kind of break the shackles of, you know, of our limited minds and tap into something that's greater than us. And we are all together greater when we do things together. And I think also that is what this approach is teaching me, is how we all complement each other. We're all puzzle pieces together.
Which brings me nicely to, I wanted to just quote something I read, you know, as you know, when I was reading about you and the work that you do, because you talk about the spiritual journey that we're on, you know, as being about, if I can just quote you here, about understanding oneself and the role one plays in the bigger puzzle of life and the universe. On one hand, being tiny compared to the whole, which is teaching us humbleness, and on the other, being highly valuable as a piece of the puzzle is of inestimable value to the wholeness, which teaches us about worthiness. So I talk a lot about understanding our self-esteem as being the unconditional value that we give to ourselves, and how this is foundational to kind of allowing us to express ourselves more authentically in the world and share our value as our contribution to the world. So my question was just, having spent so much time with those who society feel are so like useless, like we've labeled as criminals, what are your thoughts then about worthiness?
Well, it's one of the key components in all I do. You know, that is the key that is missing in most of us, because we give it away in our old stories. So if we see it as if we're writing chapters our whole life, in those first 50 chapters is where we often lose touch with our worthiness, because we have created and shaped certain chapters due to what we've experienced and what we've felt in those experiences, where we've given up on that and we started distrusting, we have started forgetting, and with that puzzle piece we get lost. We forget about that we're part of the bigger whole. We forget about that we're valuable to that. So part of what we do in the responsible individual process is the remembering process. It's untelling of the old stories. It's first the ability to identify, this is an old story that, for me, my little girl is holding, and she keeps selling this story to me, you know, she keeps making me believe that, because that is her reality. But the more I wake up to understand her part in me, and sometimes she blows herself up like that, and I believe her, and I buy that story, but to begin to write new chapters and understand that your novel of life is not complete yet, to keep writing it, to keep adding more lanes, so you begin to see, wait a minute, that part of me that made up this story that I'm not worthy, in me, she based that story on 2 puzzle pieces. I stopped collecting more puzzle pieces. So when I awaken to that there's so many more puzzle pieces, I begin to heal that part of me. You can't change the experiences you've had, but you can change how you feel about it. And that's really, really important in the healing process. And because it's a knot that she has tied, by writing more chapters, we're helping that part, that inner part, to untie the knot. Because it's a misunderstanding. And once we wake up to the misunderstanding, worthiness, it's not like we learn it again, but we arrive back into it because it is our truest essence. There is a truest essence that we do know that we are part of a whole, but we forgot. And that is a very important element in all we do. That is the first part of the responsible individual process, is the awakening into that. And when we go into the implementation part, it is about writing the chapters that are going to be added to the novel, so that you start to breathe again and live into that worthiness and humbleness, because that's the quote that you're referring to. It's very important not to get lost in that, you know, my puzzle piece is so important. It's a very fine balance.
It is.
Yes.
And when you find that, so you have the humbleness, but also understand that you are worthy. And then, as you're saying, it's looking around you. You know, what are you sharing around you? Are you sharing that worthiness in terms of light, or are you creating more darkness around you?
Exactly. You know, so it takes a huge level of responsibility the more you wake up. You know, and also because we work a lot with not good or bad, but not to take advantage of that. And so, well, in, you know, the name of learning, let me, you know, go and create more experiences and deposits, but to really understand the ripple effect you are and the share you own, you know. And I think that right there, you begin to shape those role models that will contribute really positively to how we shape both families, communities, our country, and the world.
Sure. So, yeah, very, very interesting. I have, like, maybe we should just 2 more questions, and then, you know, we can start to wrap up, because I think there's so much, you know, so much I'd love to talk to you more about. But so the one, I mean, you speak a lot about responsibility. As you know, it's like, I mean, your book is called the Responsible Individual, and that, so part of that also, because I know you speak of a few values, but another one is respect. So I just wanted to touch base a bit about what respect means to you, and this is why I want to just touch on these last 2 questions around values. Is a lot of, I believe, for us to have the kind of conversations we need to have, because as you're saying, share those stories, you need to be in a certain place. So we talk about being, you know, non-judgmental and open and being willing to listen. But part of that being is the values that you come from. And one of them for me is respect. I mean, to not be judgmental, it's to be respectful of another person's map of the world, of you know, whatever their story is in that moment. So I don't know if you just touch on what you mean by respect.
Well, I think, you know, we all have a certain attachment to the values, you know, so it's very important that we understand the story and the first 50 chapters on every single value that we express, you know. So part of the journey within, you know, what I help others with is to, of course, clearly identify what is my self-identity, and the value system is highly important here. And in my own development, you know, I had a huge attachment to what respect meant because of my upbringing. So I've had to cleanse that out a lot to really step into what it means. So for me, respect could be the same as kindness. It could be the same as mindfulness. You know, I also have a dark side in my respect. So I can identify the shadow that wants you know, to... It's a little bit more controlling, you know, that want things in a certain way. And for me, I'm awakening to that. That's not necessarily what respect is for me anymore. So I've shifted a lot in that. So for me, it is towards myself, when I respect myself, I treat myself kindly through the food I eat. I treat myself kindly through the thoughts I have. You know, in every aspect of my being, I think about what does it mean to respect Karina? What does that mean first and foremost? Because remember, to be a better community member, or better mom, or better coach, or anything, I need to be respectful towards myself. So I define that and I recommit to that every single day. And in doing so, I also, that is who I am being when I'm with others. And if I think, if I'm the best version of me, I can be respectful to you. However, we also have to realize, because we often activate mirrors within each other, meaning we often see ourselves in each other. And even if I do something with the kindest intention, it can be misunderstood, because that is part of the world and that's part of the healing, how we help each other. So it's one of the things I had to wake up to a lot as well, is that I can mean well and you might receive it completely differently. So I can do my best. So it all starts within me, the self-respect, kindness in all I do. And purity, for me a big theme this year is purity. You know, and knowing what I'm motivated by.
And I know one of your motives, what you're motivated by, is love. I mean,
Yeah.
I follow you on Facebook and that, and you talk about this. And you know, we all talk about it, but I think it gets kind of like people think it's this fluffy term, and oh, there they go talking about love again and that. So how do you speak the language of love with inmates who have probably only experienced a lot of hate and prejudice and violence?
Well, I think it's what flows within you. I think when you arrive into your beingness, you know, so part of my statement, you know, that why I do things is because love is my essence and guidance is my passion. And if I fuel my essence into all I do, and again, that I need to understand where I'm coming from. So I need to understand my shadow, my darkness, that part of me that's limited, because that will stand in the way to just flow freely. And it's also living with both of that, because I don't think love is an either or. I think love is all of it. Love is also loving you when you are in your darkest place. Love is not judging you. Love is the purest thought that I can have about you on your journey. And that is what I aspire to. And I know that I don't do it all the time, because I am a human being. I am limited. I'm learning, and I'm a student, and it's very important. And if I weren't, I wouldn't be able to guide, because I can share my own darkness with others as well and say, geez, I know how it is to judge, yeah, and I know how it is to be controlling. And that makes it so much more authentic, you know, because nobody is completely pure. But I do have and sense that energy within me, and the more I listen to that, and I meet you with that. And I think that is very important. And just to keep sharing about that, you know, it's what I feel. And it's also why I've, you know, the last 8 years here in South Africa, it is that inner voice. And it's been that river that's guided me. Even if sometimes people haven't understood or have found it, why would we support something like going into prisons? You know, it's not been, it's of course important to have support, but that voice in me has been stronger. So I've not given up on it. I just knew that I needed to continue that, you know, regardless of what kind of support was there, and to understand that there is a bigger support that you might not be able to see with your eyes, but you can feel it, you know, the more you live it. You know, so just flowing with that. And I call it love. Maybe it's a different word, you know, but that's what I attach to.
It's for you. So it's like, you know where you stand in the world. You're standing in that place of love and being authentic.
Yeah,
it sounds like in your expression of it.
Yeah, and each day I learn a little bit more about what that means, you know, because I haven't arrived any place. You know, I'm on this journey, I'm discovering, I'm researching, I'm curious. And I feel deeply privileged, you know, that I'm invited into many different environments where I can practice this. And with each person that travels with me, I learn as much as they do. about coming a little bit more home into myself.
Yeah. So your book, I know it's known, you know, in the people who work with it as the book, and it's called The Responsible Individual. Where can people get a copy of it?
Well, we only sell it via Smiling One, because you see, when I write something, I don't say it belongs to me, because I feel I receive these things and I pass them on. So the 300 Rand the book cost goes 100% into our Smiling One Foundation. You know, it contributes towards the prison work. And if you avail it through a bookstore, you know, that they take a share. And we found that we don't want it that way. We'd like 100% to go towards the work. So it can be purchased via Smiling One. They can just contact us via the website and purchase the book.
So,
yeah.
Great. So what is the website then?
It's smilingone.com. So smilingone.com. Yeah.
And people can obviously get your contact details there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'll have the details also in the show notes related to this. So maybe just then to wrap up, do you have a parting comment? Something you'd like to end off with?
Well, I think, you know, it's just important to continue to do what you do and know that we're always right on track. You know, even if it sometimes looks that we're lost or we're not quite sure, but to really embrace ourselves exactly where we're at, and to be open to that next puzzle piece that finds us, you know. For me, it's a lot about being the river and trusting that process, that you are exactly where you need to be. And sometimes we need that reminder, you know, because life can be tough at times. Yeah. But to know that open yourself. And very often when we open ourselves, that's when we find somebody, we meet somebody, something happens that enriches us. Just know that you are where you need to be right now. Just, yeah, open your arms to receive.
I'm Talana Simpson, and this has been Let's Talk Communication. For more details, find my website or follow me on iTunes or YouTube.